The darkness in the communications room became a battlefield of shadows and sound. Marcus moved carefully toward where he had last seen Davies, using the wall for guidance while staying low to avoid the occasional muzzle flash from the intruder's weapons. Davies had managed to free himself completely during the initial confusion. His years of combat training served him well as he engaged the nearest operative in hand-to-hand combat. The sound of their struggle echoed off the concrete walls. "The backup systems," the woman shouted to her team. "Find the manual override." Marcus realized she was trying to restore power to complete their data download. Even with the emergency shutdown, the computers could be restarted if someone knew the proper procedures. Unfortunately, any experienced security officer would know those procedures. A beam of light suddenly cut through the darkness as one of the intruders activated a powerful flashlight. The beam swept across the room, revealing Davies grappling with a masked man near the overturned chair. Marcus used the distraction to move closer to the computer terminals. "There," the woman called out, directing the flashlight toward a panel on the far wall. "The manual restart is behind that cover." Marcus intercepted the operative heading for the restart panel. In the cramped confines of the communications room, their brief fight was intense but decisive. Marcus's knowledge of the room layout gave him a crucial advantage. He managed to disable his opponent and secure the man's weapon. Meanwhile, Davies had overcome his adversary and was helping Marcus by blocking the tunnel entrance to prevent anyone from escaping with the stolen data. "Power restoration in 30 seconds, announced the woman, who had reached the manual controls herself. "Prepare to complete the download." Marcus realized they were running out of time. Even if they prevented the immediate download, these operatives would keep trying until they succeeded or were captured. The information they sought was too valuable to abandon. The sound of heavy machinery came from above as the emergency teams worked to clear the blocked corridors. Dust fell from the ceiling with each impact of their equipment. But Marcus knew the teams would not break through in time. "Davies," Marcus called out in the darkness. "Can you reach the secondary power junction?" "Roger that," Davies replied, understanding immediately. The secondary junction controlled power to the entire B3 level. Shutting it down would require maintenance teams hours to restore, making any data recovery impossible. The woman apparently understood their plan. "Stop them," she ordered. "We cannot leave empty-handed." Gunfire erupted again as the remaining operatives tried to prevent Davies from reaching the power junction. Marcus provided covering fire while moving to support his partner. The small room filled with the acrid smell of gunpowder and concrete dust. Davies reached the junction box and began working to disable the power systems. His flashlight beam revealed the complex array of switches and breakers that controlled the facility's electrical grid. 10 seconds to power restoration, the woman announced, her voice tense with urgency. 5 seconds to total shutdown, Davies replied grimly, his hands working quickly on the electrical controls. Marcus heard movement near the tunnel entrance. Some of the operatives were preparing to retreat rather than risk capture. But the woman seemed determined to complete her mission regardless of the consequences. A new sound reached them from above. The emergency teams had broken through the first barrier and were advancing rapidly toward their location. Heavy boots and shouted commands indicated that significant reinforcements were arriving. "Now," Davies called out as he threw the master switch. The entire level went dark. Not just the communications room, but every system on B3 lost power simultaneously. The computer hard drives would be undamaged, but accessing their contents would require major repairs to the electrical infrastructure. In the sudden silence that followed, Marcus heard the woman speaking rapidly into a radio in a foreign language. She was reporting mission failure and requesting extraction. Davies's flashlight revealed that 2 of the operatives had already retreated into the tunnel. The woman and 1 companion remained, apparently reluctant to abandon their objective completely. "This is not over, Sergeant Thompson," the woman said, backing toward the tunnel entrance. "The information we seek will be obtained eventually. Your security is not as perfect as you believe." "Maybe not," Marcus replied, keeping his weapon trained on her. "But it was good enough today." The sound of emergency teams reached the outer corridor. Powerful lights began illuminating the area as professional rescue workers advanced toward the communications room. The woman and Her remaining companion disappeared into the tunnel just as the first emergency responders reached the damaged checkpoint doors. Marcus heard several small explosions from within the tunnel as the retreating operatives collapsed sections behind them to prevent pursuit. In here, Marcus called out to the arriving teams. "We have the situation contained." Captain Harrison, the head of palace security, was among the first to enter the communications room. His flashlight beam revealed the overturned furniture, damaged computers, and 2 guards who had successfully prevented a major security breach. "Status report, Sergeant," Harrison commanded. 5 operatives gained access through a previously unknown tunnel system, Marcus reported. They attempted to download classified information about royal schedules and security procedures. The download was interrupted at 98% completion, and the data appears to be intact. Davies, still catching his breath from the fight, added, "They were specifically interested in next week's state dinner. I believe they were planning to use the information to target visiting dignitaries." Captain Harrison's expression grew serious. The state dinner was one of the most important diplomatic events of the year. An attack on such a gathering would have international repercussions. "The tunnel system?" Harrison asked. "Professionally constructed," Marcus replied. "Months or years in the making. They had inside knowledge of our security protocols and building layout. This was not a random criminal enterprise. A technical team arrived to assess the damage to the computer systems. Their preliminary examination confirmed that while the hardware was intact, the power surge from the emergency shutdown had corrupted the data transfer. The stolen information was incomplete and largely unusable. Davies pointed toward the tunnel entrance. "They retreated through there and collapsed sections behind them. It will take considerable effort to excavate and determine where the tunnel emerges." Captain Harrison spoke into his radio, coordinating with external security teams to search St. James's Park and surrounding areas for the tunnel's exit point. He also ordered increased security for all royal family members and immediate review of the state dinner arrangements. "Outstanding work, both of you," Harrison said to the 2 guards. "Your actions prevented what could have been a catastrophic intelligence breach." As the initial excitement subsided and more personnel arrived to secure the scene, Marcus reflected on the night's events. The intruders had been highly skilled and well-informed, suggesting they represented a serious ongoing threat rather than a one-time incident. Davies, examining his torn uniform and various bruises, looked at his partner with a tired smile. 12 years of routine patrols, and this is what we get on a Tuesday night. "At least it wasn't boring," Marcus replied, managing a grin despite the gravity of what they had prevented. The investigation that followed would reveal the tunnel had indeed emerged in St. James's Park, carefully concealed beneath a maintenance shed. The construction was so sophisticated that it had been undetected for nearly 2 years. Intelligence services would spend months determining who had funded and organized the operation. The state dinner proceeded the following week under unprecedented security measures. Foreign dignitaries attended without incident, unaware of how close they had come to being targets of an international conspiracy. Marcus and Davies received commendations for their service, but, more importantly, they had protected not just information, but potentially dozens of lives. Their quick thinking and professional partnership had turned what should have been a successful intelligence operation into a costly failure for unknown adversaries. The communications room was completely rebuilt with enhanced security measures. The tunnel was permanently sealed, and new detection systems were installed throughout the palace underground levels. But Marcus knew that somewhere, the woman and her team were already planning their next attempt. As he returned to his regular patrol duties the following week, Marcus remained vigilant. The palace's security had been tested and proven strong, but eternal vigilance was the price of protecting those who served the crown. He walked his familiar corridors with new appreciation for how quickly a routine night could become a fight for national security. The distress signal that had started everything continued to serve as a reminder. In security work, every alarm might be the real thing, and every guard might be the last line of defense between order and chaos. Marcus and Davies had proven themselves worthy of that responsibility when it mattered most. Armed security. "Nobody move," Marcus shouted as he entered the communications room, his weapon trained on the 3 masked figures. The intruders froze momentarily, their hands hovering over keyboards and portable storage devices. The room fell silent except for the hum of computer equipment and Davies's muffled breathing behind his gag. One of the intruders, a tall woman with quick movements, slowly raised her hands while the other two remained motionless at their workstations. Marcus could see they were downloading files onto external drives. Classified schedules, security codes, and emergency protocols scrolled across multiple screens. "Step away from the computers and get on the ground," Marcus commanded, his voice echoing in the small room. Instead of complying, the woman spoke in accented English. "You are too late, Sergeant Thompson. The information we needed has already been transmitted." Marcus felt a chill. She knew his name and rank. This was not a random break-in. These people had studied the palace security staff and planned their operation with military precision. "How do you know my name?" he asked, keeping his weapon steady while trying to assess the situation. "We know many things about you, Marcus. We know you have a daughter named Sarah who attends university in Edinburgh. We know your wife teaches at the local primary school. We know your routine better than you do." The implied threat against his family made Marcus's jaw clench, but he maintained his professional composure. These were not ordinary criminals. They were professionals who used psychological warfare as effectively as they used technology. Behind his gag, Davies made urgent sounds and gestured with his eyes towards something behind Marcus. Years of partnership had taught them to communicate without words. Davies was warning him about danger approaching from behind. Marcus heard the soft footfall a split second before Davies's warning registered. He spun around, keeping his weapon raised, and saw two more figures emerging from the tunnel in the storage room. They moved with the fluid grace of trained operatives. "5 against 1, Sergeant," the woman continued. "And we have your colleague as insurance. Perhaps we can reach an understanding." Marcus backed against the wall to keep all the intruders in his field of vision. His training had prepared him for many scenarios, but facing 5 skilled operatives in a confined space while protecting a hostage was not ideal odds. "What do you want?" he asked, buying time while his mind raced through possible solutions. "What we want, we have already taken," she replied, holding up a small device that was still downloading data. "Royal schedules, security rotations, safe house locations, emergency evacuation procedures. Everything needed to plan future operations." Marcus realized the scope of what was happening. This was not just theft of information. These people were gathering intelligence for something much larger. The data they were stealing could compromise the safety of the entire royal family for years to come. "Future operations?" he pressed, hoping to learn more about their intentions. "That is not your concern, Sergeant. Your concern should be getting out of this room alive, along with your friend." One of the men from the tunnel approached Davies and produced a knife. The message was clear. Cooperation meant survival for both guards. Resistance meant consequences. Marcus had to make a critical decision. His duty was to protect the palace and its information, but Davies's life hung in the balance. Years of friendship and service together weighed against national security concerns. "The download will be complete in 3 minutes," the woman announced, checking her watch. "After that, we leave through our tunnel. You can choose to let us go peacefully, or you can explain to Davies's family why you chose data over their father's life." Marcus's radio suddenly crackled to life with a clear transmission. "All units, this is Control. We have restored communications. Emergency teams are en route to Level B3. Sergeant Thompson, report your status immediately." The woman smiled beneath her mask. "It seems your backup has finally organized themselves. Unfortunately for them, we anticipated this possibility." She pressed a button on a device attached to her belt. Seconds later, a series of small explosions echoed through the corridors above them. The lights in the communications room flickered and went out, leaving only the glow of computer screens. "We have collapsed the main access routes to this level," she explained calmly. "Your rescue teams will need approximately 20 minutes to clear the debris and reach us. We will be gone in 5. Marcus realized these intruders had planned for every contingency. They had studied the palace's construction, security protocols, and emergency response procedures. Someone with inside access had provided them with detailed information. "Who gave you the building plans?" Marcus asked. A friend who believes change is necessary in your country, the woman replied cryptically. Davies made more urgent sounds from behind his gag. His eyes were wide with fear, but not for himself. He was trying to communicate something important about the intruder's true purpose. Marcus followed Davies's gaze to one of the computer screens. Among the files being copied were detailed plans of a state dinner scheduled for the following week. Foreign dignitaries, including several heads of state, would be attending. The stolen information would provide everything needed to plan an assassination or terrorist attack. The gravity of the situation became clear. This was not just intelligence gathering. These people were planning to use the stolen information to target a major diplomatic event. Dozens of world leaders could be at risk. The state dinner, Marcus said, understanding flooding through him. The woman's posture stiffened slightly. Clever, Sergeant. Yes, the gathering of so many important people in one place presents interesting opportunities. Marcus knew he could not let them escape with that information, regardless of the consequences. Too many lives hung in the balance. He began calculating angles and distances, looking for any advantage. 2 minutes until download completion, announced one of the men at the computers. The woman moved closer to Davies, her knife visible. I suggest you lower your weapon, Sergeant. This man has served his country faithfully for 20 years. It would be unfortunate if his service ended because of your stubbornness. Marcus could hear sounds from above as the emergency teams worked to clear the blocked corridors. But 20 minutes was too long. By then, these operatives would be gone, along with information that could facilitate a major international incident. He noticed something the intruders had missed. Davies had slowly worked one hand partially free from his bonds. Given a distraction, the experienced guard might be able to help turn the situation around. Marcus made eye contact with Davies and gave an almost imperceptible nod toward the main computer console. Davies understood immediately. After 20 years of partnership, they could coordinate actions with minimal communication. 1 minute remaining. Called the computer operator. Excellent, the woman said. Sergeant Thompson, place your weapon on the floor and step back. Instead of complying, Marcus asked, who are you working for? Which government sent you? Governments are temporary things, Sergeant. We work for a cause that transcends national boundaries. As she spoke, Davies used her distraction to free his hand completely. He reached for the emergency power switch located near his chair, a fail-safe designed to instantly shut down all computer systems in case of security breach. Marcus saw Davies's hand moving and prepared for action. In seconds, the room would be plunged into darkness, giving them a brief advantage. The woman noticed Davies's movement a moment too late. Stop him, she shouted to her companions. Davies hit the emergency switch, and every computer screen went black. The room fell into complete darkness just as the download reached 98% completion. In the chaos that followed, Marcus heard the sounds of struggle as Davies fought with his captors. Gunfire erupted in the confined space, muzzle flashes providing brief moments of illumination. Marcus moved toward Davies's position, using his knowledge of the room's layout to navigate in the darkness. The battle for the communications room had begun, and the outcome would determine whether crucial intelligence fell into the wrong hands or if 2 loyal guards could prevent an international catastrophe. The alarm pierced through the quiet morning air at Buckingham Palace like a knife cutting through silk. Sergeant Marcus Thompson had been patrolling the East Wing corridor when the first distress signal echoed from the secure communications room. His radio crackled to life with urgent voices, but the message was broken and unclear. Marcus had served as a royal guard for 12 years. He knew every sound the palace made, from the gentle creaking of ancient floorboards to the whisper of wind through the tall windows. This sound was different. It carried desperation. The communications room was located 3 floors below ground level, accessible only through a series of security checkpoints. The room housed the most sensitive equipment used to monitor threats against the royal family. Only a handful of people had clearance to enter, and fewer still knew what truly happened behind its reinforced steel doors. As Marcus descended the marble staircase, his boots echoing in the empty corridors, he noticed something unusual. The automatic lights that should have illuminated his path remained dim. Power outages were rare in this section of the palace, protected by multiple backup generators. His hand instinctively moved to his radio. Control, This is Thompson. I'm investigating the distress signal from level B3. Lighting systems appear compromised. Static answered him. Then, after a long pause, a voice he barely recognized responded. Thompson, proceed with extreme caution. We've lost contact with Officer Davies, who was stationed at Checkpoint 7. Last communication was 43 minutes ago. Davies was one of the most experienced guards in the service. He had been protecting the royal family for over 20 years. The man never missed a check-in, never left his post without permission. If Davies was missing, something serious was happening. Marcus reached the first security checkpoint. The heavy metal door stood slightly ajar, which violated every protocol he had been trained to follow. These doors were designed to remain locked at all times, opening only when proper credentials were presented to the electronic scanner. The red light on the scanner blinked steadily, indicating the system was active, yet the door remained open. He drew his weapon and spoke into his radio again. Control, Checkpoint 7 door is unsecured. No sign of Officer Davies. Requesting immediate backup. This time, only silence answered him. The corridor beyond the checkpoint stretched into darkness. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls, creating the illusion of movement where none existed. Marcus had walked this path hundreds of times during routine inspections, but tonight it felt foreign and threatening. As he moved forward, his flashlight beam caught something on the floor. A small pool of coffee had formed near the wall, still steaming. Davies always carried his thermos during night shifts. The coffee was fresh, meaning whatever had happened occurred recently. Marcus knelt beside the spilled coffee and noticed something else. Scuff marks on the polished floor suggested a struggle had taken place. The marks led toward the second checkpoint, deeper into the restricted area. The distress signal sounded again, louder now that he was closer to its source. The electronic tone was accompanied by something else, something that made his blood run cold. A voice, barely audible, calling for help. Marcus pressed forward, his training overriding his growing unease. The second checkpoint door was not only open but had been damaged. The electronic lock system hung loose from its mounting, wires exposed, and sparking occasionally. Someone had forced their way through using considerable skill or equipment. Beyond the damaged door, the corridor split into two paths. The left path led to the main communications room, where the distress signal originated. The right path led to the auxiliary equipment storage, an area rarely visited except during maintenance. The voice calling for help came from the left, but Marcus noticed something troubling about the right corridor. A draft of cold air flowed from that direction, carrying an unfamiliar scent. The storage area was climate-controlled and sealed. There should be no air movement, no unusual odors. His radio crackled with static. Then, a broken transmission came through. Thompson, careful, not what it seems, trap. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving him alone with the sound of his own breathing and the distant distress signal. Marcus had to make a choice. Follow the obvious distress signal to the left, or investigate the unexpected airflow to the right. His years of experience told him that in security situations, the obvious choice was often the wrong one. He decided to quickly check the storage area first. The right corridor led to a heavy vault door that should have required two people with separate keys to open. The door stood wide open, revealing shelves lined with sensitive communication equipment worth millions of pounds. More importantly, the far wall of the storage room had been breached. A hole large enough for a person to crawl through had been cut into the reinforced concrete. Marcus aimed his flashlight into the hole and saw a tunnel that had been carefully excavated. The walls were smooth and reinforced with metal supports. This was not a hastily dug escape route. Someone had spent months, possibly years, creating this passage. The tunnel led upward at a slight angle. Marcus estimated it would surface somewhere in St. James's Park, the public area adjacent to the palace grounds. This was how intruders had gained access to one of the most secure buildings in Britain. As he backed away from the tunnel, his foot caught on something metallic. Looking down, he saw Davies's security badge and radio lying on the floor. The radio had been deliberately smashed, explaining why backup communications had failed. The distress signal continued to sound from the main communications room. Marcus now understood that it was likely a recording meant to draw security personnel into the area while the real threat escaped through the tunnel. But, as he turned to leave and report his discovery, he heard something that changed everything. From deep within the tunnel came the sound of voices speaking in a foreign language. The intruders were still in the passage. Marcus realized he was alone, cut off from backup, facing an unknown number of hostile individuals who had spent considerable time planning this infiltration. They had inside knowledge of security protocols and access to sophisticated equipment. He moved quietly back toward the communications room, hoping to find Officer Davies and establish contact with the main security center. Whatever was happening at the palace was far more serious than a simple break-in. The communications room door was locked, but Marcus could hear movement inside. Using his master key, he slowly opened the door and peered inside. What he saw made his heart race. Davies sat tied to a chair in the center of the room, conscious but gagged. Around him, multiple computer screens displayed what appeared to be classified information about royal family movements and security arrangements. Someone had been copying sensitive data. 3 figures in dark clothing worked frantically at the computers, their faces hidden behind masks. They had not noticed Marcus yet, but time was running out. The distress signal was designed to bring more guards to the area, and when they arrived, these intruders planned to escape through their tunnel. Marcus knew he had seconds to act. The safety of Davies and the security of crucial information hung in the balance. His training kicked in as he prepared to confront the intruders, knowing that backup might not arrive in time. The next few minutes would determine whether this carefully planned infiltration succeeded or failed. Marcus took a deep breath and stepped into the room, his weapon raised and his voice steady as he announced his presence to the masked figures who had violated the most secure area of the royal residence.